Tommy didn't raise his voice. He just set down his beer and said, "Mom, when are you planning to tell us about Dad's life insurance money?" The room went still. Daniel stopped scrolling on his phone. Becca's conversation with Lauren died mid-sentence. I was standing by the window, watering the orchid Richard had given me years ago. My hand froze on the spray bottle. "What life insurance money?" I asked slowly. Tommy leaned back against the couch, arms crossed. "The policy Dad left. The one worth $400,000. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything except the sound of my own heartbeat. Not because I was hiding money, but because I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Becca stared at her hands. And in that silence, I understood something fundamental had just cracked open. Something that had been waiting to break for a very long time. Growing up, my mother used to say, "Margaret, you're the kind of woman who holds things together." I was proud of that. I thought it meant I was strong. I didn't realize until much later that holding things together meant making myself smaller so everyone else could shine. Richard was the center of our family. Charismatic, successful, beloved by everyone. He had a laugh that filled rooms. A handshake people remembered. A presence that made you feel like you mattered. And I was his wife, the quiet one who made sure dinner was ready, the house was clean, the children's homework was done. The one who remembered birthdays, scheduled doctor's appointments, kept the family calendar. I taught second grade for 23 years. Came home every day to cook, clean, and manage 3 children while Richard worked late, went to networking events, played golf with clients. When he came home, I'd have his drink ready, his dinner warm, the house peaceful. He called me his rock, his anchor. What he meant was, the person who stays still while everyone else moves. After he died 5 years ago, sudden heart attack at 58, I thought things might shift. That maybe the kids would see me differently. That I'd finally have room to breathe. Instead, the opposite happened. The visits became shorter. The phone calls less frequent. And when they did come, it felt transactional. Like they were checking a box. "How are you, Mom?" "Fine. Do you need anything?" "No, I'm okay." And then they'd leave. I told myself they were busy. That they had lives. That this was normal. But deep down I knew. Something had changed. And I didn't know why. Our family looked perfect from the outside. The Christmas cards with everyone in matching sweaters. The photos at church where we all smiled on cue. The neighborhood barbecues where Richard grilled and told stories while I refilled drinks and cleared plates. But perfection has a price. And usually, I was the one paying it. I remember when Daniel was accepted to Stanford. Richard was so proud. He threw a huge party, invited everyone we knew. Champagne, catering, a banner across the living room. He gave a toast about how his son was following in his footsteps. Daniel was 17. Brilliant. Focused. And yes, he'd worked hard. But I was the one who'd sat with him at the kitchen table until midnight, helping him revise his essays. I was the one who'd driven him to SAT prep classes at 6 a.m. every Saturday for 6 months. I was the one who'd proofread his applications, scheduled his campus visits, kept him organized when he was overwhelmed. At the party, Richard never mentioned me. Not once. When Becca got her first big promotion at 26, he took the whole family to Hawaii. 5 days. Beachfront resort. He was so proud of her. But when I completed my master's degree in education, the one I'd worked on for 3 years while teaching full-time, raising 3 kids, and managing a household, Richard looked up from his newspaper and said, "That's nice, honey. What's for dinner?" There was no party. No Hawaii. Just a congratulations card Becca picked up at the drugstore and a text from Daniel that said, "Proud of you, Mom." I told myself it didn't matter. That I didn't do it for recognition. That my degree was for me. But it did matter. It always mattered. The children learned from their father. They learned that Mom's accomplishments were background noise, that her feelings were negotiable, that she would always be there, so there was no need to make an effort. When Tommy was 16, he failed a major math test. He was devastated. Richard yelled at him for 20 minutes about responsibility and wasted potential. After Richard stormed off, I sat with Tommy in his room. We worked through the material together. I found him a tutor. I talked to his teacher. By the end of the semester, he had a B+. Richard took credit. Told everyone how he'd straightened the boy out. Tommy never corrected him. And after Richard died, that pattern didn't break. It intensified. Because now I wasn't just the quiet one. I was the grieving widow they had to manage. After Richard's funeral, I felt like I was floating. Untethered. Invisible. The kids came by for a few weeks. Brought groceries. Asked if I needed help with paperwork. Made sure I was okay. Then they slowly faded back into their busy lives. I didn't blame them. They had jobs, marriages, their own struggles. But the silence was heavy. That's when I met Carol. She moved in next door 6 months after Richard died. Retired legal secretary. Divorced. No children. Sharp-eyed and direct in a way that should have been intimidating but somehow wasn't. One Saturday morning, she knocked on my door with a plate of blueberry muffins. "You look like you could use some company," she said. No pity in her voice. No empty sympathy. Just an observation. We sat in my kitchen for 3 hours that day. She didn't ask about Richard. Didn't offer cliched advice about grief or healing or moving on. She just talked. About her work. Her divorce. Her decision to retire early and move somewhere quiet. And then she asked me about my life. Not my role as wife or mother. But me. "What did you teach?" she asked. "2nd grade," I said. "For 23 years. Did you love it?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that. "Yes," I said. "I did." "Then why did you stop?" I stared at my coffee. Richard wanted me to retire early. Said we'd travel. Spend more time together. "And did you?" I shook my head. "He was always too busy. And then he died." Carol set down her mug. Looked at me steadily. "Margaret, what do you want?" No one had ever asked me that either. And I realized, with a strange clarity, that I had no idea how to answer. Carol didn't push. She just smiled. "Well, when you figure it out, let me know." That conversation planted something in me. A seed of awareness I didn't yet know how to tend. But it was there. Growing quietly in the dark. 6 months ago, I turned 60. 60 felt significant. A milestone. The kind of birthday you're supposed to celebrate. I didn't want anything big. No party. No fuss. Just dinner with my children. Maybe a small cake. A few hours together. I sent the invitation 3 weeks in advance. Picked a Saturday night so no one would have work conflicts. Gave everyone plenty of notice. Daniel texted back 2 days later, "We'll try to make it." Not, "I'll be there." Just, "We'll try." Becca called the next week. Said she had a work event that night but would stop by if it ends early enough. Tommy didn't respond at all. The week before my birthday, I sent a group text. "Looking forward to Saturday. Dinner at 6:30. Daniel replied with a thumbs up emoji. Becca sent, "We'll let you know." Tommy left me on read. I should have known then. But I didn't want to believe it. The day of my birthday, I woke up early. Cleaned the house. Set the dining room table with the good china, the set Richard's mother had given us as a wedding gift. I made pot roast. Richard's favorite. The recipe the kids had grown up with. Mashed potatoes from scratch. Green beans with almonds. Fresh rolls. I bought a small cake from the bakery downtown. Chocolate with buttercream frosting. Nothing fancy. At 5 o'clock, I showered and changed into the blue dress Becca had given me for Christmas 2 years ago. Put on the pearl earrings Richard had bought for our 20th anniversary. At 6 o'clock, I lit candles on the table. At 6:30, I stood by the window, watching the street. At 7 o'clock, I checked my phone. No messages. At 7:30, I texted the group, "Everything okay?" At 8 o'clock, I blew out the candles. At 8:47, Daniel texted, "Sorry Mom, got held up at work. Can we do it next weekend?" Becca didn't text at all. But at 9:15, she posted a photo on Instagram. Her and James at a rooftop restaurant downtown. Wine glasses. City lights. Caption, "Date night vibes." And Tommy. Tommy posted a series of stories that night. Him and his friends at a brewery. Laughing. Playing pool. Celebrating something. Not my birthday. Just something else. I sat at that table until midnight, staring at 4 empty chairs. At the untouched pot roast growing cold. At the birthday cake with 60 unlit candles. And I knew. The silence wasn't accidental. The distance wasn't about busy schedules. Something had happened. Something I didn't understand. And they were keeping it from me. The week after my birthday, Carol came over with coffee and croissants. She took one look at me and said, "What happened?" I told her everything. About the birthday dinner that never happened. About the texts and the Instagram posts. About the growing distance I couldn't explain. Carol listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Margaret," she said finally, "have you gone through Richard's estate paperwork?" "Most of it," I said. "The lawyer handled the will. The house is mine. There wasn't much else. Life insurance." I shook my head. He had a small policy through work. It paid for the funeral and some bills. "Are you sure that was all?" Something in her tone made me pause. "Why are you asking?" "Because I've seen this before," Carol said carefully. "When adult children suddenly distance themselves from a surviving parent, there's usually money involved. Either they're worried about paying for your care, or they've already gotten something they don't want to share." The words hung between us. "My kids wouldn't do that," I said automatically. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Maybe not. But it wouldn't hurt to check." That afternoon, I went to the garage. To the boxes I'd been avoiding for 5 years. The ones labeled, "Richard, important documents." I spent 3 hours going through everything. Tax returns. Investment statements. Mortgage refinancing papers. And then I found it. A folder labeled, "Pacific Life Insurance, Private Policy." Inside was a policy document dated 3 years before Richard's death. Death benefit, $400,000. Beneficiaries, Daniel Hartwell, Rebecca Hartwelchen, Thomas Hartwell. Equal shares. My name wasn't listed anywhere. Not as primary beneficiary. Not as contingent. I sat on the concrete floor of my garage, holding that document, and felt something inside me go numb. $400,000. And I'd never known it existed. The next morning, I called Pacific Life Insurance. The representative was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hartwell, but we can't release detailed policy information over the phone without proper authorization." "I'm the widow," I said. "Yes, ma'am. But according to our records, you're not listed as a beneficiary on this policy. We can confirm the policy existed and that it paid out, but specific details would need to come from the beneficiaries themselves." My hands went cold. "When did it pay out?" A pause. The sound of typing. "The claim was processed approximately 14 months ago." 14 months. Richard had been dead for 5 years. which meant they'd had the money for over a year before my birthday, before the distance started. "Thank you," I said quietly, and hung up. I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at nothing. Then I went back to the garage, back to Richard's boxes. Because if he'd hidden one policy, maybe there was more I didn't know. And I was right. At the bottom of the last box, underneath old tax returns and expired warranties, I found a manila envelope. Inside were printouts of emails. Dozens of them. Between Richard and the kids. Subject line: Family Financial Planning, Private. The earliest was dated 6 months before Richard's death. I started reading. From Richard to all 3 kids. "I've updated my life insurance policy to list you 3 as equal beneficiaries. The payout will be $400,000 total, enough to help with mortgages, your kids' educations, investments. Your mother will be financially comfortable with her pension and the house. She's never been interested in money anyway. This way, you'll have the resources to build the futures you want." From Daniel. "Thanks, Dad. This will really help with the down payment on the new house. Lauren and I have been looking in the suburbs. Does Mom know about this?" From Richard. "I haven't told her yet. You know how she is. She'd probably just insist we give it all to charity or set it aside for emergencies. This is for you kids. You've earned it." From Becca. "This is so generous, Dad. Honestly, Mom will be fine. She's always been good at managing with very little. And she still has the house. That's worth something." From Tommy. "Appreciate it. And yeah, Mom would probably give it away anyway. She's not really focused on money. Never has been." I had to stop reading. My hands were shaking too hard to hold the pages. They had known. 4 years before Richard died, they had known that I wasn't included. That their father had made financial decisions about my future without consulting me. That they would inherit everything while I, the woman who raised them, who sacrificed her career, who held their lives together, would get nothing. And not one of them had told me. Not one of them had questioned it. But there were more emails. Later ones. From after Richard's death. From Daniel to his siblings. The insurance claim finally went through. $133,333 each. I'm putting mine toward the house. What are you guys doing with yours? From Becca. Investment account. And maybe a vacation. Has anyone told Mom yet? From Tommy. Why would we tell her? She'll just be hurt that Dad didn't include her. Better to just not bring it up. From Daniel. Agreed. Plus, she'd probably expect us to share it with her. Dad wanted this for us. Let's just keep it between us. And finally, an email from 3 months later. From Becca. Is it just me, or are visits to Mom getting more awkward? Every time I see her, I feel guilty about the money. Maybe we should space out visits a bit. Give everyone some breathing room. From Daniel. I feel it too. Lauren keeps asking why we don't invite Mom over more. I don't know what to tell her. From Tommy. Honestly, I think we just need to accept that things are different now. Mom has her life. We have ours. Maybe some distance is healthy. I read those emails 3 times. And with each reading, a lifetime of assumptions collapsed. They hadn't distanced themselves because they were busy. They'd distanced themselves because they felt guilty. Because they knew they'd inherited money I didn't know about. Because they were afraid I'd ask questions. And rather than tell me the truth, rather than offer to share, rather than even acknowledge what had happened, they chose silence. They chose to let me sit alone on my 60th birthday. They chose to protect their inheritance over their relationship with me. The next morning, I knocked on Carol's door at 7 a.m. She answered in her bathrobe, took one look at my face, and stepped aside. "Come in." I showed her everything. The policy. The emails. The timeline. Carol read through it all methodically, making small notes on a pad of paper. When she finished, she set everything down and looked at me with those sharp, kind eyes. Margaret, she said quietly, you understand what this is, don't you? I nodded slowly. They've been avoiding me because they feel guilty. No, Carol said firmly. They've been avoiding you because they don't want to share. The words landed like stones in still water. Guilt would have brought them back, she continued. Guilt would have made them confess. Guilt would have made them offer to help you financially. But that's not what happened. She tapped the emails. Look at the pattern. The payout happened. Then the visits decreased. Then your birthday was ignored. They made a calculation, Margaret. They decided that keeping the money was worth losing you. That can't be true, I whispered. They're my children. They are, Carol said gently. But they're also their father's children. And he taught them that you don't matter as much as they do. That your needs are negotiable. That your feelings are secondary. She leaned forward. The distance started right after the payout. They got the money and realized that as long as they kept you at arm's length, they wouldn't have to explain where it went. Or why you weren't included. Or what they spent it on while you're living on $1,800 a month. They've been managing my grief, I said slowly. They've been managing your expectations, Carol corrected. If they visit less, you'll ask for less. If they're busy, you won't question them. If they're distant, you won't ask about money. It's a strategy. And it's been working. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. What do I do? I asked. Carol smiled sadly. You tell them the truth. You show them what you found. And then you let them choose who they want to be. And if they choose the money, then you'll know, Carol said. And that knowledge, as painful as it is, will set you free. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd waited on my 60th birthday, where I'd folded thousands of loads of laundry, where I'd helped my children with homework and listened to Richard talk about his day, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to collapse into victimhood or make myself smaller to ease their guilt. I was going to do something I'd never done before. I was going to tell the truth. Calmly. Clearly. Completely. And I was going to make them hear it. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted their money. But because I deserved to be seen. At 6 a.m., I sent a text to all three of them. Family meeting. This Saturday at 6 p.m. My house. Non-negotiable. Be there. Daniel responded within minutes. Is everything okay? I wrote back. We need to talk. All of us. Together. Becca called an hour later. Mom, you're scaring me. Are you sick? I'm fine, I said. But we need to have a conversation we should have had a long time ago. About what? Saturday, I said. 6 o'clock. Tommy texted at noon. What's this about? I replied, your father's life insurance policy. He didn't respond after that. But I knew he'd be there. They all would. They arrived within 10 minutes of each other. Daniel first, looking nervous. Lauren beside him with her hand on his arm. Becca right behind them, checking her watch. James trailing quietly. Tommy last, hands in his pockets, avoiding eye contact. I'd set the dining room table. But not with food. Not with china or candles. Just 7 chairs. And a folder in the center of the table. Sit, I said calmly. They exchanged glances. Sat slowly. Lauren and James looked confused. My 3 children looked terrified. I remained standing. Placed my hands on the back of my chair. 2 weeks ago, I began. Tommy asked me about your father's life insurance money. At first, I had no idea what he was talking about. But then I did some research. And I found this. I opened the folder. Slid the policy document across the table. Your father had a private life insurance policy worth $400,000. It paid out approximately 14 months ago. You three split it equally. $133,333 each. Tommy looked down. Daniel shifted in his seat. Becca's face had gone pale. I wasn't included, I continued. Not as a beneficiary. Not as a contingent. My name appears nowhere on this policy. Lauren looked at Daniel, confused. You never told me about this. Daniel didn't respond. But that's not why I asked you here, I said. I asked you here because of these. I placed the emails on the table. One by one. Let them see the dates. The subject lines. Their own words staring back at them. These are emails between your father and all of you, I said, my voice steady. Written months before he died. Discussing his decision to exclude me. Discussing my finances. My future. My life. Without ever asking me. Without ever telling me. Becca's eyes filled with tears. Mom. I'm not finished, I said quietly. The room went silent. I picked up another set of emails. The ones from after Richard's death. These are conversations between the three of you. After the payout. Discussing what you do with the money. Whether to tell me. How to handle visits. I read Tommy's line aloud. Why would we tell her? She'll just be hurt that Dad didn't include her. Better to just not bring it up. Tommy closed his eyes. I read Daniel's. She'd probably expect us to share it with her. Dad wanted this for us. Let's just keep it between us. Lauren stood up. Daniel, what is she talking about? Sit down, Lauren, Daniel said quietly. No, Lauren said. You told me there was no life insurance. You said the only money from your father went to funeral costs. Daniel didn't answer. I looked at my daughter-in-law. The down payment on your new house. That came from this policy. Lauren stared at Daniel. Then she picked up her purse and walked out of the room. We heard the front door close. Daniel put his head in his hands. Mom, Becca said, her voice shaking. We didn't know what to do. Dad set it up that way. We thought. You thought I wouldn't find out, I said. You thought if you just avoided me long enough, I'd stop asking questions. That's not fair, Tommy said. Isn't it? I asked. Tell me, Tommy, when was the last time you visited me before tonight? He didn't answer. 7 months, I said. 7 months ago. Right after you got your share of the money. James cleared his throat. Looked at Becca. Is this why you've been making excuses not to visit your mother? Becca covered her face with her hands. You all made a choice, I said, my voice calm but firm. When you got that money, you could have told me. You could have shared it. You could have at least acknowledged what happened. But instead you chose silence. You chose distance. You chose to let me celebrate my 60th birthday alone while you posted photos of yourself at restaurants and breweries. We can give you money, Daniel said desperately. We can split it. Make this right. I don't want your money, Daniel. Then what do you want? He asked. I looked at each of them. My children. The people I'd loved and raised and sacrificed for. And I said the words I'd been holding inside for 60 years. I want you to stop pretending I don't exist. The words landed like stones in still water. For 35 years, I was the quiet one. The one who held everything together. The one who stepped aside so everyone else could shine. Your father. You three. Everyone got to be the star while I made sure the stage was set. And I told myself that was love. That sacrifice meant the same thing as being valued. But you didn't just inherit money from your father. You inherited his belief that I don't matter. That my needs are negotiable. That I'll always be fine, so there's no need to make an effort. And for 14 months, you've proven him right. The entire room shifted. Tommy's head dropped. Becca covered her mouth. Daniel stared at the table, his jaw tight. James reached for Becca's hand, but she pulled away. No one spoke. Because for the first time in their lives, they had nothing to say. I stood up slowly, gathered the documents, placed them back in the folder. "Where are you going?" Daniel asked, his voice hoarse. "Out," I said simply. "You can let yourselves out when you're ready." Becca stood up quickly. "Mom, please. We can fix this. We can." "I don't need you to fix it, Rebecca," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I need you to see it. To really see it." Tommy finally looked up. "We're sorry, Mom. We should have told you. We should have. You should have shown up," I said. "You should have called. You should have remembered that I exist outside of your guilt and your schedules and your new houses." I walked to the door, paused with my hand on the knob. "For what it's worth," I said without turning around, "I love you. All of you. I always have. I always will. But I won't keep making myself small so you can feel comfortable. That part of my life is over." I walked out of my own house, crossed the lawn to Carol's porch, where she was sitting with a glass of wine, waiting. She handed me a glass without a word. We sat together in the evening light, watching as my children left one by one. Daniel first, head down, shoulders hunched. Becca and James next, James's arm around her as she cried. Tommy last, standing on my porch for a long moment before finally walking away. "How do you feel?" Carol asked. I took a sip of wine. Watched the last of the sunset paint the sky pink and gold. "Free," I said. And for the first time in 60 years, I meant it. 3 months later. I'm sitting in my new apartment. 1 bedroom, downtown Portland. Big windows that look out over the river. Morning light streaming across hardwood floors. I sold the house 6 weeks after that night. Paid off the mortgage Richard had refinanced 3 times. Put the rest in savings. The apartment rent is $1,200 a month. With my pension and careful budgeting, I can afford it. Barely. But it's mine. The walls are white. The furniture is simple. There are plants on the windowsill. Herbs I'm learning to grow. Basil. Rosemary. Thyme. I joined a pottery class at the community center. Started volunteering at the downtown library on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Reconnected with Sarah, my old teaching colleague who'd been asking me to lunch for 2 years. Last week, I went to a book club meeting. Read the entire novel in 3 days. Had opinions. Shared them. No one interrupted me. No one talked over me. No one dismissed what I said. It was such a small thing. But it felt revolutionary. My phone buzzes. A text from Tommy. "Mom, can we talk? I miss you. I want to make this right." I set the phone down. Take a sip of my coffee. Eventually, I'll respond. But not today. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not rushing to make someone else comfortable. The kids have all reached out. Tentatively. Carefully. Daniel sent a check for $50,000. "Your share," the note said. I sent it back. Becca asked if we could meet for lunch. I told her I'd think about it. Tommy sent a long email. 5 pages. An apology. An explanation. A promise to do better. To be better. I read it 3 times. Cried through the second reading. Then I saved it to a folder and closed my laptop. Because words are easy. And I've heard words my whole life. What I'm waiting for now is something different. I'm waiting for consistency. For effort. For proof that they see me as a person, not just a role. Last Sunday, Daniel showed up at my apartment. No text. No warning. I opened the door. He stood there holding a bag of groceries. "I know you said you don't want money," he said. "But I thought, Maybe I could just help. With groceries. Or whatever you need. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the dark circles under his eyes. The weight he'd lost. Lauren left me, he said quietly. She said she can't trust someone who would lie to his own mother. I didn't say I was sorry. Didn't rush to comfort him. I just stepped aside and let him in. We didn't talk about the money. We didn't talk about the past. We just made breakfast together. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Coffee. And when he left, he hugged me. Not the quick, obligatory hug I'd gotten used to. A real hug. Long, tight. The kind you give someone you're afraid of losing. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. And this time, I believed him. But I still said, "I know. And we'll get there. But not yet." He nodded. And he left. And I went back to my quiet apartment. My plants. My books. My new life. Because if they want a relationship with me now, they'll have to build it. Not on guilt. Not on obligation. Not on the memory of who I used to be. But on who I actually am. And slowly, very slowly, I'm learning who that is. Margaret. Not Richard's wife. Not the kid's mom. Just Margaret. And that's enough. The silence finally belongs to me. If this story touched something in you, I want you to know, you're not alone. So many of us have been the quiet ones. The ones who held everything together while everyone else fell apart. The ones who sacrificed and smiled and pretended it didn't hurt when we were forgotten. Tell me where you're watching from. Leave a comment about what part of this story resonated with you. If you've lived something similar, your story deserves to be heard too. Maybe you're the adult child who didn't realize what you were doing. Maybe you're the parent who's still waiting for the phone to ring. Maybe you're somewhere in between, trying to figure out how to rebuild. Wherever you are in your story, know this. You don't have to stay small. Your voice matters. Your feelings matter. Your life matters. Not because of what you do for others. Not because of how much you sacrifice. Not because of how quiet and accommodating you can be. But because you exist. And that's enough. Subscribe for the next story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're still finding your voice, know that I'm rooting for you. Because there are more truths to uncover. And together, we'll find them.